Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmire. We are following a new high-profile celebrity case. Rapper YNW Melly is charged with 2 murders, and jury selection is now underway in Florida. The accusations against Melly, whose given name is Jamell Demons, made headlines all over the country. Just 4 months before the 2018 killings, Melly released a song called Murder on My Mind. In October of that year, Melly's best friend, Cortland Henry, showed up at a Miami hospital claiming his friends were caught in a drive-by shooting and were bleeding out in his car. Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas had multiple gunshot wounds and were pronounced dead. Henry told officers they were shot at while leaving a recording studio in nearby Fort Lauderdale. But when police got there was no evidence that a shooting happened. They found surveillance video that showed the 3 men in the car along with YNW Melly. Investigators determined the victims were shot by someone in the car, not in a drive-by. Police arrested Melly and Cortland Henry on 2 counts of first-degree murder each. They are being tried separately and have both pled not guilty. Because police believe Melly is the one who actually fired the shots, he has been in jail since 2019. Potential jurors will have to decide whether he should get the death penalty if convicted. Henry was released on bail and does not face the death penalty. I'm joined by my co-host, former trial attorney Terry Austin, and our special guest today, former homicide prosecutor Bernardo Villalona. Bernardo, this trial will be one of the first death penalty cases after the Parkland school shooter got life in prison. Under a new law, the vote for death has to be 8-4. How will it affect this trial?
Well, the way it's going to affect the trial is exactly what Governor DeSantis, his aim was, in order to get a lower amount of jurors necessary to reach the death penalty, in which he just signed off a couple of weeks ago. As a result of this, we're going to find that more people are going to be sentenced to death. Now, Florida has the lowest threshold in order to have the death penalty imposed, because you have Alabama. Alabama only requires a vote of 10-2 in order to get the death penalty imposed. And 2 other states, it requires, if the juries are deadlocked, that the judge actually makes the decision. So this is going to have a huge impact, not only on this case, but on other cases where defendants are facing the death penalty.
Yeah, this makes me think, if they come back 7-5, are they going to try to change the law again? Well, Terry, the state made a motion to take photographs of Melly. What is the purpose of that, and should a motion be granted?
Well, the motion doesn't mention anything about tattoos, but the theory is the state wanted to take pictures of Melly's body because it has tattoos of gang-related activity. And so now that the grand jury has brought an indictment and it is connected with this gang activity, now they want to take these pictures, they want to see the photos, and they want to probably introduce that into evidence.
Yeah, if not for the case in chief, that at the very least, if he's convicted at sentencing. Well, we have an update for you on a sex abuse case involving actor Cuba Gooding Jr. We told you Monday his civil trial in New York was supposed to start Tuesday. Now he'll avoid trial. According to court records, Gooding settled the case with a woman who filed the lawsuit anonymously. The exact details of the settlement were not released. Jane Doe had accused Gooding of raping her in a Manhattan hotel room after they met in a bar. Last year, Gooding pled guilty to forcibly kissing a worker at a New York nightclub. After he completed therapy, he was able to withdraw the guilty plea, and the charge was downgraded to a non-criminal harassment violation. The mother of a 6-year-old who shot at a teacher inside a first-grade classroom in Virginia will plead guilty to new federal charges. Deja Taylor is accused of unlawful use of marijuana in possession of a handgun and making a false statement about her drug use when purchasing the firearm. Both are felony charges. Prosecutors say they don't plan to charge the boy because of his age. He's accused of taking his mother's gun to school and intentionally shooting Abby Zwerner. Fortunately, she survived and is recovering. Taylor pled not guilty to state charges of child neglect and reckless storage of a firearm. Vander Sloot, the main suspect in the disappearance of Alabama teenager Natalie Holloway, is fighting his extradition back to the United States. Vander Sloot is supposed to be extradited from Peru to the United States Thursday morning. Vander Sloot was never charged in connection with Holloway's disappearance, but is charged with extorting money from her family. Prosecutors say in 2010, Vander Sloot accepted $25,000 in cash from the family in exchange for the location of Holloway's body. After the money was transferred, a sting operation was done, and Vander Sloot pointed to the house he claimed Holloway was buried in. He later admitted to lying about the location. His attorney says Vander Sloot wasn't notified that there was an open extradition process, so he didn't have a chance to challenge it. It's up to a jury to determine if a former NFL player is guilty of murder or acted in self-defense when he fired dozens of shots at an SUV. We're breaking down the closing arguments next. Welcome back. A former NFL player charged with murder could soon learn his fate. Attorneys gave closing arguments in Travis Rudolph's trial on Tuesday. Witnesses say Rudolph got into a physical fight with his now ex-girlfriend, Dominique Jones, in April of 2021. That's when Jones reportedly texted her brother to bring a group of men to Rudolph's home to confront him. 4 men showed up and a brawl broke out. As the group of men was leaving, prosecutors argue that Rudolph shot at them 39 times, killing 21-year-old Sebastian Jean-Jacques. He was in the passenger seat of a car when he was shot 10 times. Another man was injured but survived. A stand your ground hearing was held, but the judge ruled Rudolph couldn't use a defense because the men were trying to get away when he shot at them. Rudolph testified in his own defense on Monday, and jury instructions were read before closing arguments on Tuesday. Here's what the attorneys had to say.
Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you, even under the unlikely circumstances that they had firearms, and in fact pointed them, think about what those men would have seen. This firearm. Big one, Sig Sauer. With the drum. Heavy thing, by the way. You're allowed to touch things. Coming at them from somebody who's running towards them or walking towards them. Somebody they're trying to escape, someone whom they're literally trying to flee. They would have had every right to turn guns on him at that moment. But ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you that did not happen. They did not have time. They didn't have time. They got in that car, the car started moving, and they were screeching away, or trying to.
Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Great argument by opposing counsel, but I forgot to talk to you about the facts of the case, about what the witnesses said, about Detective Vandal and her lack of investigation. If I didn't know any better, I was watching an episode of The Sopranos. Just the names changed. Somebody disrespected a mobster's daughter, and they went to go whack him. They go kill him. That's what this case really is. Not just a video that shows you what it shows you. Of course it doesn't lie, but it doesn't show you the whole story. At the moment of truth, you can't see who's in that car and what they're doing or not doing. You'll never know. It's impossible. State can argue all they want. They weren't there. Shameful that you didn't get to see the real evidence in this case. It's a shame that nobody cared. Thank God he had lawyers that cared.
Bernarda, how much of this case rests on Rudolph's testimony, and did he do enough for an acquittal or at the very least a hung jury?
I think Travis Rudolph is going to have a hard time, a difficult time in trying to convince 12 jurors to believe that he was justified in shooting at a moving vehicle, especially if you have one of the decedents that was shot at, fired 10 times. The numbers just don't make sense. And also the fact that these people were actually leaving the location as opposed to going towards him, which is crucial. But I think if anything, it's all going to depend on the credibility, the believability, and how he came off to those 12 jurors. But it's going to be very difficult for him to get an all-right acquittal. Possibly the best term that he'll get is a hung jury.
Yeah, maybe a few believe him. Terry, the prosecution asked for lesser included charges. Did that help or hurt the defendant?
Well, in this case, I think it's going to hurt the defendant. I think he did a decent job when he did his direct exam and when he did his cross exam. I think it was very clear to that jury that it wasn't premeditated, so first degree, no. Even second degree, where you have a depraved mind, I think it was clear he didn't come out there with a depraved mind. He came out, and initially he was not even carrying a gun. But I think those lesser included manslaughter, showing culpable negligence, negligence might be a bit easier. They have the assault and battery now also. So I do think it'll be a little more difficult for him to get a complete acquittal. So those jurors are going to look at those lesser charges and they're going to say, well, maybe he didn't do first degree or second degree, but maybe it was manslaughter. So I think it's going to hurt him at the end of the day. Who knows, maybe we'll have a hung jury.
Yeah, well, we of course will be keeping track and an eye on this case as jury deliberation will begin or continues shortly.